Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manavisham Samitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Vidhati Sarvadantikam Vanchanakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhuvaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So greetings from Spotswood, New Jersey. I was thinking what would be the appropriate lecture for this kind of event. And, I'm teaching and people are hearing me online. So I thought it would be interesting, just questions and answers, and I had Sri Rupa collect the questions. But this is how I'm going to do it. No, there's a few things. That's going to be there, but before that, I spoke to my older brother the other day. Actually, it was yesterday, or 2 days ago. And he sent me, it's historical. I didn't know it was still there, but he sent me the letter when I got kidnapped that I had to sign with the notary public. In other words, after I faked that I had broken out of my trance of being a Hare Krishna devotee, then I had to sign a letter that I was crazy. And I didn't remember that letter, but then my brother sent it to me. So I just think it's entertaining. Then I should say something about mothers. It's Mother's Day, so I'll say something about mothers. And then we'll have the questions. But first, I'll read the... You want to hear it?
Yes.
It's like a rotten out swamp.
Yeah.
That way it's not my fault if it's not good. But it's... I just like humor. It's just funny. But I'll have to qualify it with, we all know that, my mother would come around, my parents came to India and everything like that. So I don't look at it as just their fault. It was a two-way street. Because when you get a powerful truth, it initially becomes a passion. And the passion means when it's not balanced. Sambandhagyan, Pradyumna told me this, metaphysical knowledge means to know the size of one truth compared to another truth. Like example, it's a hippie movement, and then people come and they kind of renounce the world, they feel a little relief, and then renunciation becomes this big, and attachment becomes this big. And what does that mean? Then women are looked at as the enemy of attachment. Family life is discouraged. And it takes a while, before truths are balanced or preaching in sadhana. You're a preaching movement and preaching becomes like this and sadhana becomes like this. So I was not exactly balanced. I'm actually going to write a Monday morning greetings maybe this week called "We Were Crazy, but We Were Fired Up," which was like the history of the Hare Krishna movement. So I mean, you can't imagine. This is 50 years ago, more than 50 years ago. You can't imagine what the communication was like in America. When I was in college, to call New York City with AT&T's monopoly, it was like $1.25 for the first minute and like 50 cents for each minute. There was no communication. There were only, this, TV channels, 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. That's it. So it was, and how to understand, it just, the country, the South, what was that movie?
Deliverance?
What?
Deliverance?
No, about the hippies. Let my free flag fly. What was that one?
Hair?
No. Easy Rider.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, Easy Rider. Yeah, driving the South, you can get shot. But it's so different. So that's the disqualification. My parents were great parents. I just wasn't able to communicate my truth properly. It's kind of like, you come in and your mother says, my son, and then you quote the Bhagavatam. Which mother are you? I've had many mothers in many lives. So I always say it's speaking the truth and having the truth understood. So in that spirit, and in my desire for comedy, okay. So I should say also, my brother, how do I do this now? I can't. Yeah, so my brother sends me, he said, this is his thing. I am a crazy Hare Krishna form letter. Here it is, just discovered it last week. It's a solid document, I assure you. It appears to be mimeograph form letter, and I love the way they spell D-A-L-A-S, Dallas.
Oh my God.
Apparently a place in either the U.S. or India. So, here it is. I signed this. As a result of the process of hypnosis, brainwashing, and mind control by this group, my free will was destroyed, my love for my parents and family was extinguished, and my freedom to come and go was removed. I was taught to hate my church. They should have put like a little line there so I could put in synagogue. I was taught to hate my church and that education was of the devil and therefore to be scorned. In fact, my mind was so controlled by the leaders of the Hare Krishna movement that if they've ordered me to kill, capitals, my parents, I would have done so. Under their pressure, I became totally unable to rationalize. Through their power of mind control, I was taught to lie and sometimes steal in the name of religion and God. The leaders directed me to work long hours, for which I received no pay, a violation of the 13th Amendment. My main job was to make as much money as possible and turn it directly over to the leaders. I accomplished this by begging in public places, airports, shopping centers, drive-in movies, and downtown streets where I collected as much as $200 a day. Some members collected more. All my personal possessions, money, clothes, were turned over to the cult, and I was made to believe that I was giving these up for the Lord. I lived in the Hare Krishna temple in, underline, you got to fill it in, D-A-L-S, under psychological fear at all times. The restrictions imposed upon me were such that I was afraid to leave the confines of the organization and was, through psychological control, unable to communicate with anyone outside the cult. I did not receive a proper diet, got very little sleep, and was generally neglected. The philosophy of the Hare Krishna cult belittles the importance of our physical bodies, so ailments were never properly cared for. Any medical attention allowed was for extreme cases only, and even then was inadequate. Because of lack of sleep, lack of proper food, and lack of adequate medical care, many of my group are ailing. On, now I got to fill in the date, 2/13/75, I was rescued by my parents and deprogrammed by Ted Patrick and Associates for the first time in, underline, 30 months. I was able to think for myself and rationalize my own. I love my family and I'm interested in mankind. I once again feel like a useful member of society. In any event, the Hare Krishna movement, any sect or cult, psychologically or physically kidnaps me back. I'm requesting immediate action by my authorities to come and physically remove me from this, because in such case, regardless of what I may say at the time, I will not be under my free will. And then I signed this letter. It's good. Here it is. Signed. I got the letter. And now the interesting thing so happened, this could only be in New York, right? So when I attempted to escape and I was captured by the police, and then my father was there. And, New York, any other place, I just could have been thrown away in jail or something. But, New York, they like to have a little rationality, even back then. So the Irish cop asked me, "How old are you, son?" I said, "I'm 24 years old." He looks at my father. "He's 24 years old." You can't keep him. My father says, "But no, I have a letter he signed that says he's crazy." And then the policeman looks at my father. "If he's crazy, what's the use of the paper he signed?" I won't go into the story now, but anyway. But so my father had to kind of press charges, and I have to tell the other part of the story. So anyway, I go to so they say the only way is you're going to have to make a complaint. So they take me to the police station, and they make a complaint. And it's one of those real, they're narrow police stations, with the high thing. And I'm sitting there, and they make the complaint, so they handcuff me. And then I'm not thinking like this, I'm walking down like this with the handcuffs. I said, "Us Jewish guys never get this." This is for the Italians. This is so cool. That's what I was thinking. We when we get older, we do the crime. It's the biggest thing. Not this big. So then I get to the mental hospital, and it's Kings County Mental Hospital, and it's the basement floor. There's no windows, and they interview my parents first, and it's dark, and it's like a little room in the corner, and I'm waiting in the waiting room, and there were really seriously crazy people. There's one lady that's talking to the wall because her boyfriend jilted her and thinks it's her boyfriend. I'm such politically incorrect when it comes to ethnic things. Then there was a big drunk Irishman strapped to they strapped him down. He was screaming violently, and there was me chanting my rounds. Because I didn't have keys, it was on my fingers, and we were fired up. So I was chanting enthusiastically on my fingers like this. We taught we can count. And I didn't have any clothes because I just came home. So I was wearing baggy jeans before they were popular. My brother's football jacket, with the linoleum sleeves. And to this day, I wish my father was alive and I can ask him. And a fez that my father got as a gift from a Pakistani insurance company. And I'm so fired up. And also, like, I have a nature. It's like, all I was thinking of, this is such a great story. And then what happens is my parents go, and then I go into the psychologist, Dr. Cohn. And he looks at me and he says, something like, "You're hallucinating, you're talking to yourself." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Because I was watching you in the hall." Right? So he said, "Well, you were hallucinating or something." And then what happened is I found the purport. I quoted the purport from Prabhupada. It was amazing. And I quoted it practically word for word. And I looked at the psychologist said, "No, I'm not hallucinating. But it cannot be said I'm seeing the same thing as you." I said, just like a rose. If one is not a theistic person, he sees the rose as separate energy from God and meant for his own enjoyment. But when you're a theistic person, you see it as God's energy and meant for his pleasure. And therefore, although I'm not hallucinating, it can't be said that I am seeing the same thing as you. And the psychiatrist went like this. He just went like this. And then he said, "That's very intelligent. I think your parents are crazy." And it was made. And then I called the Brooklyn Temple, and they sent their Kshatriyas, Bhakta Nick from the neighborhood, who just joined and figured out he was a Kshatriya, so he was making homemade weapons in the basement. So he comes, so I called the temple, and he comes in to get me, and I said, "Don't go out that front, because they're going to come. I know, I figured it out." And he said, "Don't worry." And he opens up his jacket. Carpet guns, drugs, every imaginable street weapon that you make.
Oh my God.
And then, I'm making this story short. No. What happened then? Oh yeah, then he says, no, don't worry. And then we go out the front. My father's white Cadillac with the brights come, and he comes out with the thug who was with me when they sent them, called Goose. And they come in, and they're in the hospital library, like a lobby. You know how, like, dogs, their teeth show? And Nick and this guy, Goose, "I'll break your..." And the hospital police come. They're there in the thing, and they turn me over to my parents. And then Dr. Cohn comes out of the office and says, "No! I didn't say he's crazy. I said they're crazy." And all of a sudden, I see them walking my parents. And then what happened was we decided to press federal kidnapping charges.
Oh.
So we went to the police station, and Nick takes off his wig, and it's shaved with a Sika. The police are laughing. And I don't know, like, the thing with Mahotsu, we were fired up, right? So I was fired up. So I start giving a class on Van Ashram. And I have all the policemen sitting, listening to my class about the role of warriors in society. But then we decided not. But it was... But anyway, that letter that my brother sent me, he was just laughing hysterically. "I am a crazy Hare Krishna form letter." We filled it up. Okay, now, mothers, right? And I wrote this one article called "The Mind, Mother, and Food." So I'll just summarize that article. And I had this realization, studying astrology a little bit, that the indicator for the mother is the 4th house and the moon. And the indicator for the mind is the 4th house and the moon. So I figured this must be connected, the mother and the mind. The mother means nurturing influences in one life, and the mind. So it must be connected. And then there was and then I forgot the whole article, but one thing in the article I remembered. So what is a strong mind? A strong mind is the ability to control and express emotions. If someone's mind is not strong, they're inhibited or they're impulsive. So a person with a strong mind has both. And then I was thinking, okay, who has a very strong mind like that? And I was thinking Radhanath Swami, because he's so open-hearted, but he can be very disciplined too. And then I remembered I was in the Krishna Balar Mandir, and I saw him walking by the gate of the guest house with the ashes of his mother, like just so focused. And then I followed him when he went to the river. So I thought that's, so, and then food, because how does that love is expressed? The whole idea of sense objects is to express love. You can do two things with sense objects. You can become the enjoyer and the controller, or you can become the lover of others. It's just like kirtan. Kirtan is when the bhava in the heart is expressed through the discipline of music. So Radharani is Mahabhav Sarup. She's an emotion that has form to express that love. So love is always carried, it's always materialized. So I figured that the way that a mother basically expresses his love, one of the main ways is through the cooking. The food, that's one of the main ways. Mother means the affection of family is through food. And when you eat the food, and this is, you're not just tasting tastes, you're experiencing affection. And what happens is that creates samskaras in the heart of hope. So that type of experience, and it's more complicated, I know, I'm just on a basic way, it inoculates people from depression. Because when things go down, they have something to draw upon. And at that time, I remember another example of that is that one devotee, he was a wonderful devotee, and he had a disability, and I'm sure growing up in America, it must be very heavy for him. And he found his self-worth in his service. He was a cook, and then he got too old and he couldn't cook, and he fell apart. He just fell apart. And people kept on coming and preaching to him. And then I was just saying, wait a second, this guy knows the philosophy better than anybody else. It's not the philosophy. So I went to the person, this was in India, who was the leader, and he was still taking care of his mother. He was still taking care of his mother. And I went to him, I said, what are they doing down there? This guy needs help. Don't you understand he's depressed? He said, depressed? He had no frame of reference for what depression was. He had no frame of reference. Because he had so much love, he didn't have any, it just wouldn't go there because of those deep impressions in his heart. He said, I heard in Bollywood sometimes people get depressed. So, it's so important. The mother is the most important person in society because she creates the strong minds in the children. And the success of society is the mother, and the mother, nourishing the children and expressing that affection. So this is the day that the mothers are honored. Right, Kishori? Yeah?
Yeah.
You like being a mother?
I love being a mother.
Well, everybody's an individual and has different ways of approaching life, but I was watching this video, a guy named Arthur Brooks. He's a Harvard psychologist, and he studies happiness. He studies happiness. It was a 6-minute thing. And he was discussing the psychology of happiness. And it was interesting, a very, distinguished looking person. And he named 3 things. It's not exactly our philosophy. We have a little more renunciation thrown in there. But he had faith, family, and work. And when he discussed work, he discussed 2 factors. That it should be a sense of accomplishment in your work. The sense of accomplishment. Some struggle that I've achieved something. And then he also said in terms of the work, a sense that you're helping others. That's the satisfaction of work. And then family, he looked at the audience and said, we need more babies. You're shaking your head. But this also, so I understood that, and then I looked back at my own mother and saw all the trouble we gave and understood how difficult that was, but rewarded. So, okay, now the questions. So, okay, Sri Rupa.
Okay, Maharaj, the first one.
Krishna Raju called this Stump the Guru. Anyone, you pick it out.
Okay.
Go ahead.
After spending so much time in India, what is it like for you to come back to the U.S.?
What is it like for me to come back to the U.S.? Well, me coming back to the U.S. is not like you coming back to the U.S. Because I'm unemployed. So it's different. There was one sadhu, that's a famous sadhu in Vrindavan. His name is Premanandaji. 20,000 people at 3 o'clock in the morning are waiting for him. So I had one person who's assisting me, and he went to his lectures on Vrindavan Mahimamrita, which is, I don't say fanatic, but it's the most hardcore book about living in Vrindavan. They have statements that I'd rather hear the prajalpa, the idle talk of the Basis, than attain love of God at any place else. But he said one thing nicely. If this is for me, it's different for you. He said, when you leave Vrindavan to give Vrindavan, then it's none different than Vrindavan. So it's not the shock where I'm working 50 weeks a year and I get 2 weeks off and I go to Vrindavan and then I'm into everything so my life basically stays the same. It's not that much of a shock for me, but it is in the same sense because, Vrindavan is something special, Govardhan is something special, but it's not the variance that you would see if I had to just come back and then just go back to work and take care of a family and all these things. So, that's what I say. Okay.
Scientists always say that you are living longer and doing better, and in the last couple of centuries, that seems to be true. But when we read the scriptures, we read that in Kali Yuga, everything is supposed to be shorter in duration. So can you explain?
These are the Stump the Guru questions, right? Well, the verse is Prain alpa yasha shubha kalavis bin yugejana manda sumanda mandayo manda bhago upadruta. Living longer, right? There's one book written by one of the 4 horsemen of atheists called Christopher Hitchens. And I kind of liked him. I was not speaking to you, but as mentioned, I like when people are independent thinkers. Not that they have to agree with me. So he was an atheist, but he was also independent. He would say things that all his friends would hate him for. Like he supported the war in this, but he was an atheist. So he was a great writer. And I'm not sure, this is not going to connect directly. He was a great writer. And he was such a great writer that he can be stoned, drunk, and he had to write at 8 in the morning, and he'd come back at midnight, and he'd be able to write an article. and he was a great writer. So when he died, he got throat cancer. He was able to write up to, and he wrote a book called Death. So I read that book, and he described how horrible it was. And he said the advancement of modern medicine is to prolong one's torture in the body and take all the family legacy. So maybe we're increasing life, but certainly the quality of life is decreasing. When I came back from India for the first time after 3 years, they had the thing where you got the cans and you put it on the counter and it registers. You know, you put it on the counter and it registers. And I never saw that before. When I was young, we'd go to Maya the grocer, and he'd have a pencil in his ear and an organic paper bag, and he was so proud he would just get the numbers quickly. But now it was like this, boom. And I said, oh my God. My parents took me shopping the first thing. You know, things have improved so much. And then as a staunch Hare Krishna, I realized that this wasn't our philosophy. And then I said, but the quality of life hasn't improved. And so that's the thing. There's more depression, there's more anxiety, there's so many things. People can't buy houses, anymore. I mean, it's just increasing. It's becoming more and more difficult to live, etc. Okay, but now people are living a little bit longer now, and maybe modern medicine, there's some advances, etc. But if you want to go by the scriptures, Kali Yuga is 320,000 years. So if you really want to judge that statement after just a couple of thousand years into, Kali Yuga, you want to judge that statement, because things can go like this, right? So are you saying they're going up or down if they're going like this? There'll be peaks that go down and peaks that go up. So at the same sense, if things are going down, there may be peaks that go up. It doesn't go. So maybe we're living a peak of life expectancy. But even that, I watched Death in India, right? And it doesn't have the same terror as it does here. Because people inherently have that spiritual sense that they're not the body. So it doesn't have the same terror. Like my friend Sridhar, the famous gardener that I would take people for the rotis. You'd like that when you take your classes there. Yeah. People remember it. And, I was there 2 weeks before he died. He came back from the hospital. It was kind of, people die at home. I wrote a Monday morning greetings where I put an article from some medical people who described, he was a top doctor, how his mother was dying at home. And he was describing what's that different if she died in the hospital. With the noise and the nurses and the things and dying at home with family, etc. So, yeah, I would just say it's a temporary peak, but things are degrading. Okay.
What is a Krishna miracle? Can you describe a Krishna miracle in your life?
A Krishna miracle, huh? Well, what's a miracle? A miracle is something that apparently happens beyond the way the laws of nature kind of work. Right? That's what a miracle is. It's something that beyond that. I'll explain 2 Krishna miracles. I was in 1978, I went to South India to preach. It was incredible at that time. Amazing. And I am known for my excellent fire of digestion. It comes from my mother. My mother would go to the Vyas Puja and eat the feast, and then, I would go back to see her, and she was eating. Never gained a pound in 95 years. So I have that karma, this good digestion. And all of a sudden I was in South India, and I started sleeping, and I lost my appetite completely. And then, jaundice it is. I was shocked. I had no appetite at all. So I went to a doctor, and I had to go on a 48-hour train in 3 days to get back to Vrindavan to open the school and do so many things. And the doctor told me, you should not travel in your condition for 3 weeks. So someone told me that there is a Pelia Jona Wala, a housewife, a simple housewife. Pelia means yellow, Jona means to wash, and Wala means the person who washes yellow. So I went to this simple housewife, just a simple housewife. And I sat down, and she put some water in my eyes, and yellow came out. The next day I was eating samosas. Completely cured. And there was a guy, Shamsaki, in Vrindavan, a sadhu, Shamsaki, who was the Pelia Jona well. He used to cure it by mantra. And my friend, who was a magician, went there to check if the yellow that was coming out was a trick. He couldn't find it. But this is the better Krishna miracle. In the early days of the Hare Krishna movement, there was a line drawn. You want to join the Hare Krishna movement? You move in the temple. Got 5 kids, no problem. Move in. Completely. Otherwise, you're not a devotee. You got that when you came a little bit, right?
Not by then so much.
What?
It was like that then, though.
It was like that,
Yeah.
right? Your brother, there's a line there. You got to join, and so I couldn't do it for 4 years, even though I got the Bhakti Lata Beach. I got that. I wanted more than anything else to be a devotee. It was my dream, but I couldn't do it. And for 2 reasons: the good cop and the bad cop. My mother and my father. My father was a good cop. I remember in the hospital, when they released me, my mother threw the ultimate brahmastra. You're killing your father. That was the first brahmastra. The second brahmastra was a Yiddish brahmastra. We're sitting Shiva for you. Shiva is it's like the funeral ceremonies. 2 brahmastras. So that's what I had to face, and I eventually faced it, but I couldn't join. So I visited the Dallas temple. My college roommate had joined. And somehow, I don't know, he invited me down there to drive the van for the devotees for Prabhupada's, that Ratha Yatra with Prabhupada with the white sweater and the red garland.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was so exciting. So I went to that. I drove people there. Then I went back to the temple just to hang out for a little while before going back. And they said Prabhupada was coming. So I stayed. And then I was doing some service. I was painting one room, and they said, Prabhupada said all the devotees can come up to his room. And I remember at the time when he said that, I didn't know if it referred to me because I had a mustache. And that wasn't a devotee. So I said, can I also come? He said, you can also come. He didn't say I was a devotee. And then Prabhupada's sitting there, right? And I have the picture of that, of the two Rasgulas, and everyone got two Rasgulas, 150 people. And I'm in this hallway of a line, and I'm going, oh man, I wish I could surrender. Sarvadharmam Parityajya Mamekam. I knew that one verse. I have 4 years, I should know that verse. Surrender, give up everything, don't fear. I go, Masu Chaha, and I can't. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't break that line, no matter how much. And I want Masu Chaha, Masa, but I just couldn't. And then Prabhupada gave me the Rasgulas, and I bit into the Rasgulas, and all doubts were gone. So to me, that was kind of a Krishna miracle, because I couldn't. It wasn't like an intellectual thing. It was some potency. So yeah, those are Krishna miracles. Good.
So can you speak more about receiving the Bhaktilata Beach?
The Bhaktilata Beach. Wow. There's a verse that describes that. Brahmanda Brahmate Konya Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Pasadi Pai Bhaktilata Beach. You're wandering from universe to universe, species of life to species of life, until by the mercy of Guru and Krishna you get the Bhaktilata Beach. So the Bhaktilata Beach is faith. And what is faith? I quote, faith is trust by experience. You get an experience, and what is that experience? You get some experience. Prabhupada said faith is unflinching trust in something sublime. Unflinching faith in something. You get a taste of sublimity that's beyond a sensuous or egotistical joy. It's beyond that. And that becomes your goal. There's two things in faith, the experience and the knowledge. Hari Kirtan, he said a nice thing when I interviewed him. He was right here, we interviewed him, and he wrote a very nice book. You ever see his Bhagavad Gita? Really good Bhagavad Gita. He said what happens is when you can get people not to judge the Bhagavad Gita by their own intelligence, but to see the world through the Bhagavad Gita. So that kind of understanding of reality and how things work. So the Bhaktilata Beach is that really that experience. And somehow or other, that experience let me know that this is the goal. And then a lot of times the experience is introductory, because you're not really qualified to maintain it. So it's an introductory thing. Because sadhana practice is based on your goal. You have to have a goal. So the goal sometimes comes first. So you get that experience. And as C.S. Lewis says, these type of faith and experience, it recedes. We forget experience because we're not experiencing at the moment. So it recedes. And he says people don't leave spiritual movements, over some kind of, quote that Prabhupada said, or we went to the moon, we go to the moon, women, so many things. You don't leave. It's because you're not renewing the experience. The experience recedes. And you forget that experience. So the Bhaktilata Beach is that experience. And I think I got it. The first time I went to a temple was 1970 in the temple in Watsika Avenue, the same temple, they had it. And I went, and we show how cutting edge Prabhupada was. The temple was church pews. The deities were behind. Prabhupada, I can't say you weren't confronted with a conversion experience, because everybody was in robes and incense and, the beautiful American boys and girls, and, it was pretty far out. But I think, I honestly speaking, the prasadam, it says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that there are spiritual senses. And that Lord Chaitanya was saying when he had Jagannath Prasad, he said it's the same camphor, it's the same black pepper, it's the same thing. But what is this fragrance? What is this taste? So somehow or other, there were many ways in which you get this experience of your spiritual senses that's so far beyond the ordinary thing that becomes your goal. So that was the Bhakti Lata Beach. And I think I got it there. And I remember going to the Henry Street Temple, which was, my God, it was all-star team. We talk about Agni Dev and Jai Sachinandana, Vishnu Gada. They were all-star kirtaniers, all-stars. And there were also all-star cooks. Mangalananda, the musician, he was a great cook. They were great cooks. And classes, Jadharani and Jayadvaita Maharaj. Jayadvaita Maharaj would sit there. Some people, I call it like the Joe Friday of ISKCON, just the facts. Just the facts, And he'd sit up there and, it's kind of like a cobra because he's very thin, but when he preaches, he comes up. It's like terrifying, right? And then he smiles, you know what I'm saying? And coming to Krishna concert the first time, hearing his just absolute logic and Jadharani and the classes and everything, and the kirtans. I remember when I went that, the Madanga was very simple and they were the same beat. And you'd hear the holy name, and my God. So that was the Bhakti Lata Beach. As Borijan said, we were all pure devotees until we got a taste for power. And the hierarchy and everything, and then you wake up and you're trying to figure it out. Okay, good. These are nice questions people said.
What role does friendship between devotees play in spiritual advancement, and how can we deepen Vaishnava relationships?
Friendship, wow. Well, that's what a devotional society is. When Garuda was in Harvard, he told this one story that a distinguished professor came, and the distinguished professor said that there's no example of a Vaishnava society in the Vedas. And they grew to, he was in a little bit of a bind. I got to defend this, but, you got to do the protocol. I've seen, when the protocol is like busted, it's horrible. So he just asked a question. He said, how would you categorize the verse, Matchita Matkata Prana, Bodhiantas Paras Param? What is a Vaishnava society? Devotees are constantly enlightening one another. And in terms of, from the spiritual platform, it's pleasing to Krishna. Shrinvata Swakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Hidyanta Stoya Badrani Vidanoti Suritsatam. When they see real Vaishnava friendship, really, Vaishnava friendship means, what is it? Tadati Pritagrinati, Guyam Yachi Prabhunte Bojyatecha, these type of exchanges, Krishna becomes pleased. And he kind of blesses you in your consciousness. What to speak of the psychological factor? I know one of my godbrothers had advanced age and he decided to get married after being sannyas for so many years. And Vaisheshika Prabhu told me this story. When he was visiting him, he asked him, you have any friends? And Krishna Kanji said, no. Relationship, in other words, our philosophy, even on a material platform, kamesya nendriya pritya labo jivetya, it asks, what about sense gratification? And the answer given in the Bhagavatam is, Nendya Pritya Kamesya, it's not for the senses. It doesn't mean it's not useful. That's not the objective. It doesn't mean you don't take it. It has a purpose. You take what you need for the higher endeavor of Krishna consciousness. So there's so many things we need. And just on a material platform, every aspect of our life, social, physical, and mental, is nourished by the number of quality relationships we have. So if you don't have those quality relationships, everything suffers. What to speak of, the nourishment has right now. It just started about almost a year ago with Dhanurdhara Swami, that we try to meet every day. It usually works out at least more than half times the week, and we read. We study Brihad Bhagavatamrita very deeply. And there's so much laughter, there's so much joking, so much laughter, but so much philosophy. I'll tell you the joke now that just broke him. He couldn't stop laughing. You want to hear it? In Judaism, when you have the Passover, there's 4 questions. And you have to ask those 4 questions. You have to ask these questions, the 4 questions. And one of the questions is, it's a special day, why is this night different from all other nights? That's one of the questions. So I told him, I said, do you know where this came from? I said, what? I said, it came from King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. He said, really? I said, yeah. He said, how is that? He said, well, one of the knights was gay. So he asked, why is this night different from all other nights? Not everybody has the same sense of humor. But anyway, among friends. No? Did you get it?
Night and night.
Not Ross, a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Why is this night different from all? Anyway, friendship is Bhaktivinoda Thakur said. He said, what is the purpose of Van Ashram in Krishna consciousness? Right? He said, what is the purpose of Van Ashram? And there's so many things. What is the purpose of Van Ashram? Having the proper occupation, having the proper social. He said that proper occupation and proper social position, it creates, I can analyze it, it creates mental peace, physical health, social health. He says without mental, physical, and social health, what is the question of the higher endeavor of Krishna consciousness? I'm not even getting out. Here's another story. I once went to see this Bhakti Vaibhav Puri Maharaj. And he was the younger Puri Maharaj. He was 97 years old. The older Puri Maharaj was 101. And I went to see him in the morning. And he was a very fiery person. So he heard that we were going and seeing Gauranga Maharaj and Raganuga Bhakti and things. So I just walked in innocently in the morning, right after his morning program, and he looked at me. He said, so, you want to understand Raganuga Bhakti? He said, in the West, you don't even understand the love of a mother for their child. He said, just like I had a friend. He said, I knew one man in Calcutta. He was 75 years old. He had 10 children, 100 grandchildren. He had 1,000 people working for him. But he would only take food from the hand of his 95-year-old mother. That's the love of a mother for her child. And if you don't understand that love, how will you understand the love of Mother Yasoda? So there's relationships here. It's and also spiritual. Just the nourishment spiritually, because friends mean sharing. And what are they sharing? We're talking about just take away Krishna consciousness, it has a role. You take Krishna consciousness, and it's the vehicle where hearts of devotion are shared. because these exchanges of inquiring in confidence, explaining in confidence, giving gifts, accepting gifts, giving food, accepting food, this creates a conduit to the other person's heart. So when you have friends that are like-minded in spiritual life, this is just sharing hearts and realizations, and this is the way we advance in Krishna consciousness, by having friends in Krishna consciousness. Besides all the other psychological stuff, the spiritual stuff and the nourishing of that is just so essential. Okay. So far, hasn't stumped the group.
What's the relevance of Brahmanism in Gaudiya Vaishnavism today in the context of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's introduction of the sacred thread and the Brahma Gayatri? Is it still relevant today, and how do we understand
Explain
that?
this question to me. Can you explain this question?
What do you mean?
What does this question mean? Let me see if I can understand it, okay? Let me see if I understand the question, okay? Is this question asking, like, Bhakti Siddhanta gave the Brahmins threads and everything because in a social context to give us some relevance, and now it doesn't have relevance in this age?
That's basically the question.
That's basically the question. Yeah, it's really a tough one because a lot of things don't have relevance. In one sense, sannyas doesn't have so much relevance in the modern age. You know, people don't really care what your clothes are, really. You know, because even the Hare Krishna movement, it started institutionally. So a sannyas had an institutional position. But in society, the modern society for preaching, it doesn't have an institutional position. In fact, it's sometimes a burden because a lot of the people coming are women, etc. It doesn't. So, excuse me. Okay, so, and I'm not sure. I mean, wasn't the well, and also this is a very difficult subject because the second initiation is the Diksha mantras. That can be given without the thread.
Pre-Bhaktisiddhanta was given without the thread.
It was given without the thread.
Yeah.
They gave just initiation like that.
Gopal mantra and Kama Gayatri was normally given
Without the
pre-Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati.
I'd put it this way. It doesn't have as much relevance as it does before. Right? You know, having the thread in society. And was it called Brahman initiation or was it just called initiation?
I'm not.
Because they used to give the thread to kids when they're 13.
Upanayanam, right?
Yeah, they gave the Upanayanam. Well, let me see. Maybe the answer will come. Panch Samskara. Initiation was 5 things. It was first tapa, some kind of regret that this was my material life, now I'm coming to a spiritual life. I'm sorry about that I acted as the enjoyer and controller, I'm going to change. Second thing was, okay, I have a family now. You get the tilak. Tilak means I belong. Like a woman has something and that it means I belong to my husband. There was different cultural things, so I belong. Third thing was nam, right? You get a name, spiritual name, and you get the holy name, and you get a spiritual name. Then there was mantra. You get these mantras. And then there was worship of the deity. So that wasn't required. I don't know this technically. That wasn't required either. Worship of the deity to have a... No?
Thread? No.
Okay, well then I would say there's certain things that don't have as much relevance, but because Prabhupada instituted them, it's hard to change.
Can I say something?
Yeah, say that, yeah.
The thing I struggle with is that it's that we become a Brahmin in the Bhagavad Gita by guna and karma,
Right.
but in the society or institutionally, it's that we needed more pujaris, so we're going to give you it's a more functional thing as opposed to the actual qualification of the person.
Yeah.
And so I personally haven't got any satisfactory answer from anyone to convince me that it's like a relevant thing in this day and age.
Now,
Yeah.
you mean but you just said they didn't need. You're talking about the thread, or you're talking about the mantras.
No, just the outwardly, I'm a Brahmana now, and I have a thread.
Yeah, and it's not given necessarily for Shamo, Damas, Tapau, Saucham, Shartim, Arjam, Avich,
Right.
Ganam, Viganam. In other words, the qualities. You see, I think what happens is this. What an institution is, right? It's defined as you have to carry that which is proper, that which is right, proper, and of value into the future. See, otherwise, sometimes, okay, ISKCON, even I look in North America, who is the GBC? What do they function? Who are they? It doesn't seem relevant to what's happening. Everything's expanding outside of it. It seems complete. But at the other hand, and there's two types of institutions. One is the hard institution. It's the structure, the laws, the buildings, the thing. And one is the soft institution. It's the people and the teachings, right? And traditionally, it's more carried through the teachings and the people than a formal society. But you can't say that the formal society doesn't have any purpose. Because we even look that after so many years, ISKCON's still together after 40, 50 years. And it keeps a certain... One person said, maybe it's just book distribution and the temples, the deity worship. Maybe it's Mayapur and Vrindavan. So those things in the institution, they're fixed at a particular time to carry this culture, and then what happens is things change. And that's the real question. When things change, how do you make it relevant again? And the difficulty is, Prabhupada said, he stressed the institution in one sense, and it's good because it kept it going. But, it's hard to change it. You know what I'm saying? That's the question. It's so difficult to change it.
Right.
Let's say you take out one thing or another thing. Is it worth the fight? Or how would it change? Because Prabhupada said, there's so many things that are, I can name many things that no longer seem relevant, that people have to take initiative to do. And then there's this tension, right? Well, how does it affect that structure, which is also of value? And I don't think there's any easy answers to it. I think the easy answer is two things that probably what will happen, there'll be very powerful people, because I think that's how Krishna consciousness spreads. There'll be very powerful people eventually that have their own, whether they stay within or not, they'll have their own things, and they'll have a little bit more independence to maybe change something. Change one of the rules that was relevant at a particular time and doesn't seem as relevant this time. And then the question is, it's so dangerous to do that because the whole thing can unravel. Because then people become independent. The Bhakti Center initially, I think when you were in the Bhakti Center at that time, it was like the height. I don't think it's at that level now. It was really dynamic. The fact that you would want to join, right? It was very attractive. So they had a thing, firmly rooted, branching out. And it's such a high, for example, Rasanath said, I remember one meeting where Rasanath said, we want to have the CC in the morning. right? It's much more dynamic. We don't want Prabhupada's murti in the temple because new people don't relate to it. Radhanath Swami said, no, these are things that are fixed. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think he even wanted to go to the analysis of it. Because once you start changing things, the whole thing can unravel. I just think I would answer it like this. I think you have a valid point that it's not as relevant now because you're giving it, it's okay to give it for initiation, but to just, I looked up at, to give it as this person's now this position in society, when he may even be a great Vaishnava, but he doesn't have these qualities.
Right.
So then you want to establish Varnashram, and how are you going to establish Varnashram where just to worship the deities, or even to get it really initiated, the real initiation, the Diksha mantras, in one sense, is the real initiation. Then how do you do that? Right? It actually goes against Prabhupada's desire to establish Varnashram. And the early days, my God, sannyas. You know what happened when Guru Kripa and Yasodhananda took sannyas at the age of 21? They read the Bhagavatam, that one who sits on the Vyasa, they got to conquer all the other philosophies. So they went to South India. And the first people they wanted to challenge was the Madhvas. So they went to Pejava Swami, who is you heard of there's 8 mutts, but Pejava Swami was the one that was like, right? And they looked at him, they challenged him. What are the 3 aspects of the absolute truth? Fortunately, he started to be amused. But what is it? Sannyas? Sannyas is obsolete in one sense. In the West, what does it mean? I mean, it has a little residue. But would it really matter if Burijan Prabhu came here or Vaisheshika Prabhu came here? We had Mukunda on. He seems like a learned guy. Does it really matter as an institutional thing anymore? I wrote an article as sannyas become obsolete. And how do you change these things? Anyway, good question. I have to think about it. Okay, any other questions? Let's see. Okay, let's go another 15, 20 minutes more. Kirtan. Okay.
What do you see your future is in Krishna consciousness?
Now, this is funny because there was this one old Prabhupada godbrother. No one knew Prabhupada's godbrother. No one knew him, but he was a sannyasi. And he gave sannyas to Parvat Maharaj. You know Parvat Maharaj? Loki Saranga?
Oh, with the beard.
With the beard.
Yeah.
And so he had that beard. You know what his background is?
Italian.
From the Bronx. He lived in Radhakund with that beard, and he was so sattvic. People respected him. So someone asked this thing. He said, he asked him, how are you? He said, how should I be? I'm going to die, old. My future? It's really hard because what bhakti means is to make yourself available for service. So it can change, depending on health and so many things. But what I see my future is, and what I honestly believe the Krishna conscious movement needs, is to really be a Vaishnav. A Vaishnav. Considerate of others, serving others, cultivating deep sadhana, being open to others. I think Vaishnavas are needed. From every level, Vaishnavas are needed. Especially when you don't have a family, you don't have a job, you're not managing anything, etc. That's what I see. And but at the other hand, what happens sometimes when you do that, then Krishna brings you out. I used to visit Narayan Maharaj, And, you could visit him during the day and there was nothing going on. He would be sitting outside his room chanting. That's all. You go like 10 o'clock, 11, he was sitting outside his room chanting, right? Peaceful. So maybe that was his plan. His plan was to do bhajan. He was a champion athlete, and then he joined. He had 2 children that he left, and he joined. And he was also intellectual. They gave him work, but he used to be exercise. So he lifted up his shirt and he had a big scar. He had an operation. So he one day he left and he went to Govardhan. And he told me every time he saw a devotee, he cried. Every time he saw the Govardhan, he cried. And he used to visit this Vaishnav called Priya Charan Das Babaji. Very elevated soul. I once visited him. So he was like in that mood. But then Krishna had some other plan for him. Prabhupada said, now Prabhupada gave over the manager of the GBC. He said, now I want to do Nirjan Bhajan. So my plan is to chant and chant more. That's what my plan is, to chant and chant more. And then see where Krishna takes me. Maybe I'll try even to get a tourist visa, maybe I'll try to get a longer term visa. I love staying in Govardhan. Really nice. Okay.
If you could go back in time and tell your younger self the most important thing that you have learned, what would it be?
Wow. There's so many things I think. The younger self? In other words, I may know them now, but as a younger self? Learn the verse of the 6 obstacles to devotional service, especially niyama agraha. Too much affection for the rules when they don't serve the purpose. Most people have a problem with too little affection for the rules. I had too much affection for the rules. The whole society was like that, and what happens is you start to see the service is the institution and not the people within it. So many things happen like that. And I give the classic example of niyama agraha, too much attachment to the rules. I was in a building in India, and somehow or other, I don't know, it was the 2nd floor, and someone said there's a snake in one of the rooms. So they called the chowkidar, right? And he comes, and they say, what's it? There's a snake in the room. So he takes off his shoes and goes into the room. It's too much attachment to the rules, right? You don't go in a room in shoes in India, right? So he followed the rules. And then the snake bit him on the foot. No, I'm joking. What's the use if you're not alive, right? Okay, good. These are good questions.
What is your elevator pitch for Krishna consciousness?
I don't know what an elevator.
So it's like in 3 or 4 minutes. If you met somebody and only had 3 or 4 minutes to speak to them, what would you tell them about Krishna consciousness?
My pitch. What would I may not even tell them about Krishna consciousness. The way I am, I would schmooze with them. I wouldn't get to Krishna consciousness at all. No, really. I would.
Scare them away.
I ask him if he ever heard of Rodney Dangerfield. And then tell my favorite Rodney Dangerfield. This is one of my favorite, right? He goes to, he has a gambling problem. So he wants to join Gambling Anonymous. They gave me 2 to 1. I wouldn't make it. Okay, yeah, we can go a little longer. We got 10 more minutes. Then we'll have kirtan and then prasadam, okay?
What quality in a devotee impresses you most? Give an example of such a devotee you met besides Srila Prabhupada, both past and present.
Is so, I really like people who are considerate of others. That are considerate of others. It's so easy to be narcissistic, right? This term I use, Gil, right? Eric Fromm. I read 3 books in my life and I throw them out. Narcissistic means to see the world through your own desires. And it's so easy to do that in the modern world because you got to protect yourself. That's why I say community is so important, because community is where common interest is better than self-interest. And even family, you learn that the world's just not about you, right? It's so there's things, people that are considerate, but I'll just tell the past, because the present, then, you say one person, you leave out another person. And when I first came to the temple, this is so I met the devotees in Watsika Avenue. It was a great experience. The prasadam, the kirtan, it was an incredible experience. And we were going up Highway 1 to San Francisco. And we went up, we decided we'd chant Hare Krishna the whole way. And then I tell the story, we got to San Francisco, we were hungry. So you people here will understand it. When I say this in India or other places, Russia, South America, they don't understand it. We went to this restaurant because the waiter insults the patrons. So I say this in South America, Russia, they don't understand. They're from New York, and insults. So we enjoy it. Then we get out, and then the Harinam was there. The Harinam was there, and we joined the Harinam. So wow, right in front of that theater. And I said, I know this, and I joined the Harinam. Then we needed a place to stay. But as I tell the story, is that by 1970, it was no longer the summer of love, because that kind of mood of hedonism and enjoyment, it always leads to drugs and violence. So the whole Haight-Ashbury was completely burnt out. So no matter who we called, they wouldn't give us a place to stay. But and this I'm going to point to the devotee that impressed me, that one person said, you can use my bathroom, but you can park, there's a parking lot where you can park, and you can sleep in the parking lot and use my bathroom. So we did that, and it was of a football stadium, but in those days, you didn't have to have big parking lots for a football stadium, because it was in the city. It was Kezar Stadium, and it was in Golden Gate Park. And I would say it had room for 100 cars maximum. And so we come in. This is a football stadium, and this is Frederick Street. So the back of the stores face the parking lot. We get in and we look, and we see that there's smoke in the window and robes. And I look at my friend and I said, oh my God, everyone in this damn city is into this. This is called the transcendental system. It was, and then the next morning we get out, there was one car, and there was this big tall guy. He was in the car fixing the car. And the next morning we go in, and that same person was the temple president. It was Jayananda. And he was very kind of impressive. And I walked in, and he was speaking to some nuns and some like Ukrainian, Russian refugees. I could see the compassion in his heart. It was so there. And then he gave us some service. They were making rata red plum chutney. So we peeled, and then they were doing kirtan in the park. And we went to the park. And then when we come back, he's at the door. And they charge for the Sunday feast. So normally we get some upset. We don't have any money. So you have any traveler's checks? But he was so pure and selfless. You know, when we see him fixing the car and then he's the temple president. So he really impressed us. Considerate people. You know, people who put others before themselves. I don't have to name them. The people, you know, I used to organize, I was in charge of the kitchens in Vrindavan. And then we had these huge feasts, and so many of the leaders, the gurus were leaving, and everybody was taking shelter in Vrindavan during Prabhupada's disappearance day. And there were so many people coming, and we didn't have the proper kitchen. We didn't have the place to serve them, but somebody was managing everything. And there was kind of two classes of devotees. One class of devotees who rushed to the front of the line, and when the cauliflower cheese sabji came, were harassing the server to pick out the cheese for them. I hated that. and I stopped it. And then there's another person who wants to serve. So, you know, the consideration. And that's exhibited in Lord Chaitanya during the daytime. Lord Chaitanya during the daytime, he wouldn't exhibit his ecstasies because it was too much painful for his disciples. But at night, he would cry and exhibit his emotions. And I was just reading that with, in Gop Kumar, he was, you know, not exhibiting his ecstasies because he wanted to disturb people. So that's the quality. I mean, and there were so many selfless people. Selfless. I remember, for example, the temple commander when I got to Vrindavan. He was actually served Jayananda. His name was Kritakarma. He made Advaita a devotee, made so many people devotees. You know, the kind of guy that was taking out the garbage and serving everyone selflessly. Those are the kind of people that impress me or anybody. Okay, one more question, and then we'll have a little kirtan, and then we'll have prasadam.
What direction do you think the Krishna conscious movement should go to be successful? What should they change?
Wow. Ooh. It's a long subject. I thought maybe something about it. You know, how to attract people and actually train them. I think the direction, honestly, I think there has to be powerful individual leaders. You know, maybe they're cooperative with Prabhupada, and, you know, but powerful individual leaders that have a vision. That's the way it goes, not bureaucracy. You know, it's not going to be institutional. The institution could be respected, but I don't see it as the vehicle. If it's smart, it can be the vehicle. If it empowers individuals that are very powerful and pure and lets them grow and have their power and develop their vision. And I think if people do that, I think eventually, it's very hard. I had a godbrother, Tejas Prabhu, and this guy was a genius. Too bad you couldn't get him on one day. I don't think he's too old. But when he was in college, they had to make a separate major for him, psycholinguistics. And then he was in the Peace Corps. And he was like a genius. He figured out how to grow things better than anybody else, farmers. When he came to the Krishna consciousness movement, every single temple, all their money had to go through him. all the money had to go through him. And, and then, because Prabhupada said he should start the Kisan movement, the farm movement, he one time went to Boston for 2 years and studied everything on self-sufficiency. There's no one that knows spiritual economics like him. And he said the failure, it's a real problem, the failure why farm communities are not successful. And Prabhupada wanted people to be in environments with simple living and high thinking, because it's so difficult where you can train people and children can grow up. He said the difficulty for it is that the modern age, people are conditioned to a false standard of opulence. So they'll never see in a farm that, community and fresh air and all these things are opulence. So how do I see it going? I just think, I'm reading this book, like Raghunath had it. It's about the early days. It's about New Vrindavan. My God. It's very neutral. It's very edifying. But the sacrifice that people would make. It says harsh bliss. They were experiencing the harsh bliss, the sacrifice. I think the only solution is powerful leaders that can inspire people, and especially inspire a core group of people. I remember when Burijan was speaking to Shamdas, and Shamdas, I forgot Burijan was making, how do you keep the purity of a movement? Burijan said you need monasteries. You need places that maintain the purity. And what's an educational institution supposed to be? Traditionally it was the one place in society that dealt with every other issue in society. And the whole culture of society was preserved. So the future, if there is a future, I think there has to be a combination of very powerful leaders that inspire people to live a more simple life. And I don't know, it's so the future. It used to be, they bought a farm there for $7,000. I was recalling in one article I was writing, I forgot what the theme was, but I was mentioning that when I visited my friend in California, in Hollywood, he had his own house and he was a hippie. My brother, before he got the government job he has, he's driving a taxi. He lived with his common law wife on the Upper East Side. I was in college. For like $8, I can make a feast for 30 people. Gas was 19 cents a gallon. When I got out of college, my parents, they said, "We're so proud of you. We're getting your own car." New car, $1,900. And it's not just inflation. Inflation is something. Economically. So right now, I can't, buying the buildings we had, in Boston, we had 2 of those buildings. Buying the skyscraper. It was just, I don't know what's going to happen. It really depends. I think it depends on the world situation. Tamal Krishna Maharaj, you know him? He told me that he was on a plane to Dallas and he watched the film JFK by Oliver Stone. And when he watched that film, because he was so smart, he understood from that film the powers that control the world. He understood from that film. Kennedy assassination and there was a trial trying to, and I met one person, a devotee, whose father was connected with them, who was murdered. It's things like this. Whatever, he watched that film and he says, I thought we were going to take over the world. Now I think maybe I can just help a few people in Dallas.
Wow.
So there has to be something cataclysmic to really get forth. Maybe people born into the movement, that really have something, some special souls, and then having the movement being able to be empowering rather than bureaucratic, being able to see a person's ability and say, go for it, and let them expand. It's attention. So basically, I don't know. Okay, let's have a kirtan. Okay, Lamras, you can. Yeah. Okay. You're the drummer.
Hare Rama, Hare Hare